Hello everyone, welcome to the IEEE Tunisia section webinar series. It's a great pleasure to have with us this afternoon Professor SAIFUR RAHMAN to present the role of the smart grid in facilitating the integration of renewables. Professor SAIFUR is the director of Virginia Tech Advanced Research Institute in US. He's the president of the IEEE Power and Energy Society in 2018 and 2019, and currently is the candidate for the IEEE President-elect 2021. Professor SAIFUR, thank you for accepting our invitation. It's a great pleasure to hear you for this interesting talk. The floor is yours.
Okay, Habib, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody in Tunisia and surrounding countries. This is my pleasure to be with you and speak in front of you. I've been to Tunis many times. I've been to other parts of Tunisia, Kairouan, and so on multiple times. So I'm very happy to be back. Again, as you see, two key items here, smart grid and renewables. We'll see how we can make the two work together, therefore make the renewables integratable more easily into the electric power grid. Okay. Then the question is, before I say anything, people ask me the question, what is the smart grid? I have to tell you, a smart grid is not something that you get done. You never get it done. You always can improve and get somewhere. So I say a smart grid is a concept with many elements where monitoring and control of each element in the chain of generation, transmission, distribution, and end use allow electricity delivery to be more efficient. This is a key word, be more efficient. Starting in the power station, transmission line, distribution, all the way to the end use. That's the concept. We can decide where we want to focus at distribution level, transmission level, generation level. All of that I'll talk about as we go forward. So let's talk about the grid first. Grid means network. This is an electric power grid or electric power network, which is, we all know this. We have also natural gas grid, water supply grid, the fuel supply grid. Grid means a network. So then the question is, when we say a smart grid, are we focusing on this grid? Because this grid in almost all countries is already quite smart. It has advanced technologies, PMU, fax devices globally. They're smart. That means we need to focus on the other parts of the supply system, mainly distribution system, where we will talk more about this afternoon. So what is then the motivation behind smart grid? Why we want smart grid? Well, we want to make the grid safer, smarter, reliable, and more cost-effective using advanced sensors, communication technologies, and distributed computing. Keyword is here, one of the keywords, distributed computing. That means we will do some computing at the user level and not have to transfer all that information to the control center. And I'll explain that as we go forward. Okay, now this is how I explain the smart grid and not so smart grid. This is my way of explaining in simple terms. On the left-hand side is a normal telephone, which we have seen for 50, 60, 70 years now. It's still somewhat in use. That phone in the US now costs about $10, $15 if you can get one. Just $15, no more than that. On the right-hand side is a smartphone. This happens to be an iPhone. And that phone, if you want to buy an iPhone version 11, it costs you over $1,200 US. On the left-hand side, a phone is $15. Right-hand side phone is $1,200. 80 times more expensive. 80 times, 80. If you want to make a phone call, you want the cheaper phone. Why you buy the expensive phone. You buy because the expensive phone does more things than the black phone does. It can do Instagram, it can do Facebook, it can do YouTube, it can do video we are doing right now. It can do audio activities, video, it can do word processing, it can do text messaging, it can do time, it can do camera, all of these things. The point is, that is why I said before, smart grid is not cheap, it is cost effective, meaning it can do more things for you, like the smartphone does for you. Keep that in mind. So we will not talk about cost unless you talk about the value first. So this is why we want to think differently, that an expensive thing doesn't mean it's bad if it gives you more things to do with it. Fine. So what then are the starting and ending points of a smart grid? Of course, it starts with the power station. Then the power electricity is then transmitted over long distance transmission lines, comes to your neighborhood, your part of the town, to a distribution substation, and from there the voltage is reduced further, goes to your building, your home, your office, all that. Finally, the electricity has to end up at your refrigerator, washing machine, light, computers. That is the end use device. That is why I say a smart grid starts at the generator, ends at the refrigerator. Then the question can be, what are the building blocks of a smart grid? How to build it? Well, at the top is technology, of course. We need to have technology that will be useful, allowable for us to do certain things. Like, for example, smart meter. A regular meter that you have for many years, analog meter, could be digital, that gives you reading for power energy consumption. It has to be read either from face to face or from a distance using radio signals. But that's there for a long time. That is now changing. Smart meters are able to give you data every minute, every 30 seconds. Typically in the US, they're measured every 30 minutes, not once a day or not once a month, 30 minutes. But then the issue is, if it is measured for 30 minutes, you got in Tunisia, the power utility, then they want to buy smart meter from many supply sources, French, German, American, Chinese, whatever it is. That means if there are multiple vendors selling the same technology, they must be following some standards. That's the second box, standards. So we have technology pretty much done today for smart grid. Standards has been challenged before. Now it's pretty much accepted. IEEE has standards, IEC has standards. So standards do exist for smart grid technology today. That's done. Next is rates and regulations. Why is smart grid important? Because if you look at a smart advanced system, they will be able to tell the customer that a hot summer day, like happening in Washington, D.C. today, hot summer day, the power will be very expensive or more expensive than normal between, let's say, 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. That information has to be given to the customer through the smart meter so that they can avoid using high amounts of electricity between 1 and 6 p.m. on a hot summer day. But that information is regulation and rates. That has to be known to the customer so that the customer can take action using less energy during peak hours and more energy during off-peak hours. That's what I mean by rates and regulations. If the price of power, electricity, is same all the time, 24 hours a day, then you as a consumer have no incentive. You don't care. But if you are told pricing is different, you'll be reacting differently. The work is going on. At the bottom is the final thing, which is not done yet, consumer awareness and education. If the public doesn't know the value of the smart grid in terms of pricing, in terms of controlling, voltage control, all of these things are not known to most people. You and me, we know this because we are power engineers or we are engineers, we have studied these things. So biggest challenge we have as academics, educators, so that we are able to let our citizens, consumers know what value smart grid can give them. Like you saw the smartphone. Nobody had to teach you how to use it. It's very interesting. You figured it out. Very intuitive. So smart grid is not that simple. You cannot figure it out. We need education, awareness by consumers to make it happen. That is still the challenge. My point is, unless that is done and understood openly by the public, the consumer, smart grid would not penetrate at the level we want it to penetrate. So just keep that thought in mind. Now, how has the grid evolved in the last 10 years? Last 10 years. The upper third of the screen shows before smart grid. The lower part shows after smart grid. If you focus on the first third of this picture here, this is the grid as it exists today. Power station, step-up transformer, transmission line, step-down transformer, local circuit, local distribution network, and your home. It's going on for 130 years now. After smart grid, things are changing. Why? Because the system is no longer as simple as before. We have rooftop solar, we have electric vehicle, we have storage battery, we have wind power. All these things are coming in to the grid, so we have to deal with them. That is why we need some new technology, new algorithm, new understanding how to make them all work together. Okay. This is how I explain smart grid. To me, smart grid is an intelligent set of interconnected microgrids. Microgrid, we'll talk in a second. They has to be interconnected, and intelligent meaning you have to know what resources a microgrid has that is excess, can be shared by others, or whether a microgrid is short of capacity, how can the neighboring microgrids help them? That's what I mean by intelligent, interconnected microgrids. Okay, now there are 1, 2, 3, 4 microgrids in this picture. If you focus on the one on the upper part of the screen in the middle, 1 microgrid, 4 homes, rooftop solar, and a communication network talking to all the buildings. What's happening here, in this microgrid, you can buy and sell electricity from neighbors. That's called transactive energy. And you have a data collection and data service system where they'll keep track of how much is sold at what price, how much you bought and when. That's 1 microgrid. We've got 1 more to the right-hand side. One in the middle is a little bit bigger because it has more commercial buildings, it has transformers, all that. And it is receiving power from the right-hand side, bottom of the screen, from the power station. And then at the bottom of the screen, another microgrid, which has storage batteries. Those are the things we are working with for our system planning. Fine. So for all these things to happen, you realize you have to merge power flow with information flow. Here, top of the screen, power flow, no information flow. The second one at the bottom, after smart grid, the dotted blue lines are information lines, data lines. This is new. So that means we have to merge power flow with information flow, which will have integrated communications. Look at this picture. That's your power infrastructure. We know this. Power station, transmission line, substation, distribution substation, local circuit, end of the line. You got battery, fuel cell, cogeneration in industries. This is happening today. What is new is this part, the red lines. We have now superimposed information infrastructure on the power infrastructure. You'll notice these red lines have arrows both ways, up and down, left and right. That's important because the communication that we are inserting into the power grid has to be two-way. That means the power company should know in real time what is the voltage at my smart meter at my home. I also should know what is the price of electricity now and next 2 hours, next day, next afternoon. I have to know that. That's two-way communication. That is how smart grid is different from the normal grid. Fine. So why is that important? So we have talked about smart grid. You I hope get a full idea or some idea about smart grid operation. Fine. Now the challenge is the changing infrastructure. Historically, we have only a generation and load served by the generator. Now we have all that plus local supply, rooftop solar, wind, electric car. That car has a battery. That battery can be used to supply power in your home if you have shortage of electricity. All that is possible now. Fine. So what are the issues then? If those things come in, wind, battery storage, solar, what are the issues? First of all, we know wind and solar are intermittent. They are not there all the time. Solar not there at night, as an example. Hydro is not intermittent, but it is space limited. That means you cannot put hydro everywhere. You can put hydro near a river bank, but you cannot put hydro in Tunis. But you can put solar in Tunis or put battery in Tunis. That means even though the resource, water, wind, and sun are free, they are not always usable. Nighttime sun is not there. At daytime, if we have intermittency, the wind is not useful. Those are the issues. I'll explain them as I go forward. Let's focus on wind energy first. I'm going to share with you some data from northwestern United States, a power company. They are called BPA, Bonneville Power Administration. I have data from them for many months of the year. I'm showing you only 4: winter, January, spring, March, April, summer, July, fall, October data. Look at this one, January or winter data. Typically in the US, power companies have dual peaks. One in the morning about 8 o'clock, one in the afternoon, evening about 7 to 8 p.m. However, for the case in Bonneville Power Administration, the wind output, the red line, is different. It is low in that night, slowly picks up. By midday, it is high, then begins to drop. That means neither the morning peak nor the afternoon peak can be matched by the wind power. This is January, winter time. Let's look at April. Similar issue. April, the peaks are there, dual peak. The wind output is decreasing and decreases to a number which is about from 8,000 to 1,000, 1/8. That's the springtime. Summer, again, the problem. Summer peak in the US is flat and wider peak, not double peak you have seen just now, because of mainly air conditioning demand. So now you have this smooth demand for electricity for the location, for the power company service area. But look at the wind supply. Very low during the midday time, and 6 p.m., 5 p.m., really low. Then it picks up at night time, is more than any time in a day. So that's very useful, but it is not matching the load shape. Finally, in fall, autumn, October, again, we got the dual peak back because it gets colder. We don't run the air conditioner, obviously, but we need heating. So the wind is, again, not matching with the demand, even though this picture is better matched than the others, because here you have high wind most of the day till about 5 p.m. It did catch one of the 2 peaks. That's the autumn data. Now, variations. This is data from a 150 megawatt wind farm in Texas. You see here, it is working quite well on a given day, about 140 megawatt range, 135. Then suddenly about 6 a.m., the wind stops or slows down. Your load is only 100, the supply is about 90 megawatts. So from 140 became 90. Keeps on dropping, goes as low as 40 megawatts, then picks up. So if you don't take this into account, you'll have difficulty managing your load when the supply suddenly changes. Next picture, even more serious. Here, for a 150 megawatt wind farm, the supply dropped 113 megawatts in 10 minutes. This is the problem. How you deal with it? You can say, well, I'll put solar and wind and put a lot of batteries. If these things happen, battery will take care of it. It can, but battery is very expensive as well as space consuming. More data from Texas. 2008, 1st and 2nd January, you see the wind was pretty good, 2000 megawatt output, 2100, and drops down to 100 megawatts, then stays low. Same day, pretty low on the 1st, 2nd pretty low. By about 6 p.m. begins to pick up. That's 2 days. Following 2 days, very good, very clean. Now you'll say, well, when this thing happens, we have a lot of white space, a lot of wind unavailability. You can buy storage and make it up. You can, but when this happens, you're not using any storage at all. Because storage is expensive. So what the point I'm trying to make is, if you have this situation because of load not being served, you can buy batteries, but if you buy battery for these 2 days, you don't use them for these 2 days. Their investment is not fully utilized. That's a very important point. You cannot buy just because you need on 1 day of the year or 2 days of the year. It has to be always used frequently so that the revenue from the battery is good. Okay, that was solar. Now that was wind. Now solar. This is my building in Virginia Tech. I put 6.5 kilowatt of solar panels on the rooftop to see how the solar output matches or doesn't match with demand. The sunny day in summer, everything is good. Sunny day in winter. Sunny day is fine, but it's winter. That means you got snow covering the panels, and we don't usually go to the roof and clear the snow. We just do not go. We wait till the sun melts the snow. My point is, even though you have a sunny day, doesn't guarantee you full output. You can deal with that as you go forward. Okay, these are some data from my system, 7-day solar PV output on a week that is clear. So you can see the output stays 5,500 watt for my 6,000 watt system most of the week. That's the 1 week. This is a bad week. Here you see I am getting fairly low here. Now look at this. 1 day, now it was a week, now 1 day. 1 day pretty good, except there are certain fluctuations, intermittency, cloud movements, fine. This is a day, not very good day, meaning the solar output is low. These are facts of life. So what do you do? Well, that's the challenge I'm going to address. If these things happen, they will happen. What can we do? Well, here is your answer, part of the answer. Battery storage, talked about this. Pump storage, hydro. Compressed air energy storage. Let me take the attention to you, for you, on the lower left-hand side of the screen, pump storage, which is basically a hydro plant where during off-peak hours, use the equipment, which is pumping water through this penstock into the upper reservoir. When the demand grows, you will let the water come down from the upper to lower reservoir and make electricity. That's pump storage. On the right-hand side is compressed air storage, where we, during off-peak hours, excess capacity, you will use the compressor in a turbine to compress the air and push it to an underground mine and store it there. When the time comes, peak load happens, you release the compressed air from the cavern and bring it to a generator, gas turbine generator. As you know, gas turbines require storage, compressed gas. Here, the storage is giving you compressed gas without going to build a compressor for the gas turbine. Fine. So that was the supply side, pump storage, battery, compressed air. How about demand side? That's something I want to focus on now. I'm showing two things here. At the bottom of the screen, DSM, demand side management. At the top of the screen, demand response. So let me define these things. Demand side management means the power company has the right and the opportunity and the capability to control your demand remotely, directly. What's happening today in the US, two cases, Canada and other countries as well. Power company will turn off my air conditioner when the demand is high, could be a hot summer day or something else. They will turn off my water heater also, which is a higher than average equipment and device. So that's demand side management. That didn't succeed very well because that interferes with somebody's household and lifestyle. Why is it important? An American home has 4 or 5 things which are higher voltage, 220 volts. Air conditioner, clothes dryer, water heater, and what else? Electric oven, right? Those are your high voltage, high power devices. And now we can add electric vehicle to that list. So electric vehicle, you have your electric oven, got your electric storage, all that. That's done. What I'm saying, rather than power company turning my AC off, I'll tell them, give me a signal, give me a number. What do you want me to do? Signal could be between 1 and 5 p.m. Please drop your load by X percentage. What I will do in that case, I will go to my home situation or office and see what is running when the control signal comes in and make a decision. Look at this picture here. This is the situation today. New paradigm for the power system. Historically, it was we call demand-driven supply. That means supply responds to demand, obviously. The power company makes long-term load forecast, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 15 years, and based on that information, they decide to build power stations. That's the practice for the last 100+ years. Things are changing now. Before, the demand was fluctuating, supply met the demand. Now, supply-driven demand. Demand is the dependent variable. Before it was independent variable, now dependent variable. It depends on, or it has to depend on supply. If you don't have solar power and depend on sunshine only, then your load has no other choice, right? No sunlight, no electricity, no output. So what we are saying, in the demand-driven supply is one. Supply-driven demand, where demand needs to adjust to meet the fluctuating supply with help from storage. Very important. So we are looking at demand not fixed, not independent. If supply is limited, demand will change to make that possible. That's what I call the smart grid ecosystem. The smart grid ecosystem, at the core, is the smart buildings. Smart building is intelligent building. It has building automation. It has smart devices, productive users, and grid integration. What do you mean by productive users? On a hot summer day, you want to make sure the air conditioning where people are working is sensitive to what their need. In other words, we can do micro zone level temperature control to make sure temperature is not too hot or too cold. That's smart building. Then you got multiple smart buildings could form a smart campus, like Enid campus in Tunis can be a smart campus if you have buildings are smart on that campus. Then a city may have multiple such smart campuses, which is fine, and then you'll connect many smart cities into the smart grid. So that's the smart grid ecosystem. Smart building, smart campus, smart city, smart grid. Fine. So what makes a building smart? Building has some functions like heating, ventilation, air conditioning, lighting, water supply, sensor networks, security camera, and fire emergency. Unless they are connected to each other, they cannot get more benefit than they were getting otherwise. My point is, keep that thought in mind. We should be able to get all the information from a smart building to the control center, which will decide which building needs how much power at a given point in time. So that was one building. If you have a large number of such buildings, each talking to each other, you will have opportunity to use your benefit, your supply, to give certain services to the companies. For example, if there is a large fluctuation of supply, because the sun is moving, I mean, the cloud is moving on the sun here in my neighborhood. Then if you have a smart campus, which has multiple buildings, we can play with the demand for all those buildings and make sure the supply side is not overloaded to match that demand. Also, if you have small opportunity for demand response, you can match some shortage of supply from the grid because of wind and solar not acting. There is, because you have already set up, you have some storage. So that storage can be used to meet the lack of supply from wind and solar. And of course, you have to invest for monitoring and control because this is highly controllable. If you do not take action in a minute, then this builds up and doesn't work very well. Look at this. We have then issue of how to address the intermittency in renewable generation. I say smart versus not so smart load control. If the picture you saw, if the wind was going down wind speed and giving me less energy, what I could do simultaneously, I would put more control for my load, which can be controlled. Like if you change your thermostat setting from 22 to 24, you don't tell the difference. You can dim your light from 100% to 80% intensity, you'll save energy, but you don't tell the difference. That's what I mean by adjusting temperature set points rather than turning them off. So there are technologies to do this. Storage is one of them, but I'm focusing more on the control of the load side, output inverter control. So that's it. That's my last slide. As Dr. Habib said, I'm running for IEEE president this year. I have a website which has the slides I just showed you have been posted on the website. If you go there, if you get a chance, you'll see that this is the website which has many things. Doesn't matter. If you go to the tab called webinar, you'll see the webinars I've given and giving in many countries today. If I go July 21, here you go. Tunisia, today's 20th. Role of smart grid to facilitate integration of renewables. If you go click there, you'll see the slides I just showed you. So again, I am done in terms of the presentation. I will stop sharing and go back for Dr. Habib and others to take over and run the Q&A session. Thank you very much, everybody.